Hi, I'm Keith Buchanan. I'm speaking to you today as part of the Hexham Hidden Gardens. We won't be here unfortunately on the day, but I'd like to share some of the things that we've been doing in the garden here in relation to wildlife. So one of the first things to do to benefit wildlife is just to take your foot off the throttle a little bit. That's the way to think of it. So for example here, we've created, first of all, a pond. The pond is one of the most important and valuable things you can do to assist wildlife, particularly if you only populate it with native plants. So plants that are native to the British Isles are most valuable for wildlife. But when you come to do a pond, if you can edge it with some meadow, that's also very helpful. Meadow is one of those habitats that's decreased hugely since the war. And a lot of our wildflowers depend on meadow. So attached to my pond here, I've created a strip of wet meadow, which is actually lined but backfilled with soil. And then just behind the wet meadow is more conventional meadow. Now I'm trying two different techniques here. One, I've taken all the sods out and reseeded it with a meadow mix. The other, I've just let the grass grow and I've put in little individual plants, which we normally call plugs, to diversify the flora. So there's lots of flowering things in the meadow, and that's very good for insects. And when we're talking about that, you could leave your dandelions, Many people are instinctively remove dandelions, but we've discovered that dandelions are a very important early nectar source for bumblebees, for example. So continuing in the garden, and my garden is not that big, but I planted a native hedge, native shrubs, hawthorn, blackthorn, wild rose, up against a fence, and that will gradually produce flowers as it matures, and it will be a good nesting habitat for birds, etc. Now at the back of the garden is the wildest zone, where I've really left things to get on with it in terms of wildlife. So the shrubs that have grown up, I don't go in there other than to make some compost. So a lot of birds are nesting here at the back of the garden. I've also got wood piles in there, which are very good for hibernating amphibians and hedgehogs. So any piles of stones or wood is very good for invertebrates and helps things like newts and frogs overwinter, because it's important to think about that as well. So there's a mix of things that I've been doing in the garden here. Also some bug hotels, as people call them. Now these can be very simple. One I've made here is just a piece of drainage pipe with bamboo rods pushed into it, pea sticks pushed into it. And solitary bees will quite happily use that, or you can buy proprietary ready-made bug hotels of various sorts. And of course nest boxes. And when you think about nest boxes, there are two different sorts you should think about. The conventional sort with a hole, which is good for great tits and blue tits, but also open-fronted boxes. And if you tuck them behind climbers, you'll find that robins will take to them quite readily. So you want to have a mix of nest boxes, and if you're near anywhere where there are nesting swifts, you can put swift boxes high up on your house, 4 meters or higher, as swifts are suffering at the moment from a lack of nest sites. So these are just some of the ideas that anyone can do in their own garden. Just think about putting the chemicals away, putting your feet up a little bit more, and let nature take its course. That's all you have to do, really.